And good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the AFC Championship game edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. And, of course, all eyes on the ankle of Patrick Mahomes. How healthy can he be? Does this really compare to the 19 ankle injury he had? How much is the offense going to have to change for the Chiefs to be effective? Do you go to Chadiha at some point? Can Isiah Pacheco be the equalizer? He had 95 yards against the Jaguars. The defense, come on, Jeff, how about a round of applause. Finished the game with a couple of takeaways, even without Chris Jones. Still never getting a playoff sack. Will that ever happen? Special teams, not so special yet again. Could the weather be a factor? Maybe we'll even squeeze into the joy of Chiefs fans. Carl Cheffers is going to call the Super Bowl. We'll certainly give you who we think is going to win and why. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is off and running.
This is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric is the senior VP of Research and Development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And a good evening to you. If you're catching us via the podcast later in the week, remember we do stream live Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Central. If you would like to be a part of the broadcast, you can do it. We've got folks lining up in the comment room. You can be a part of the conversation, as many people do. Of course, like that button. Or hit that like button, smash the love button, subscribe if you would. Don't cost you nothing, does wonders for us. Of course, make sure you support our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, our fine sponsors. Jeff, let's dive right into it. The ankle of Patrick Mahomes. What are you expecting out of Patrick Mahomes as we head towards this game? How much is he going to look like the Patrick Mahomes of old?
He's not. I mean, I'm betting he's probably 60 to 65% of what we're used to seeing, which might even be generous then. You watch the way he moved around after he was hurt. You know the history of this injury. Every player who's had it, most guys aren't even trying to play. They need 4 to 6 weeks to heal from it at the most minor level of severity. And we know that Patrick Mahomes, a big part of his game is moving around and improvising and being creative and going off script. And when you take that away, it's a different offense. That's what makes him special. And you're talking about playing against a team that really knows how to play against him anyway. I expect Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo to come up with something to slow him down again. He'll be out there. He'll be valiant. He'll do his best, but he won't be the guy we've seen all year.
Eric, are you even sure that he's going to play?
I'm not only sure he's going to play, I think that he'll be fine. I
just want to be clear.
Fine.
Your doctorate is a PhD, right? Yeah, not an MD. Yeah. I just want to be clear.
Sure, but I've touched grass before. My last high school game, I was, folks, I was a wide receiver in high school. I had a very similar injury in my second to last game. And it's so bad that I could not go back into the game because I could not put weight on my ankle. And we taped it up. We did all this stuff. I played took the shots, and I played my last game. I think I caught 3 passes for like 50 yards. And I played wide receiver. And that was 3 days later. He gets 7 days rest here. Now,
are we really doing this?
So what Jeff said, I went to high school in the suburbs of St. Paul. Like Pat.
Oh, well, then you're completely qualified. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that.
Pat not only got back into the game, right, and gutted out the end of that game, he has, obviously, one more day of rest than normal. He also has, obviously medical staff and everything, and he's going to get the shots that he's going to need for it to be fine. Like I agree with Jeff that some of these injuries for like running backs and wide receivers are prohibitive. For a quarterback, like, I mean, we're not talking about a guy we're not talking about Lamar Jackson here. We're talking about Patrick Mahomes. Like, 60%, like 60% is ridiculous, Jeff. I feel like I would put it at like 85, which 85 is enough to win this ball game.
85.
Soren is chopping at the bit to get on some of this. You go
Listen,
ahead.
I don't know. First of all, let me say this. I don't know what's going to happen. Do I think he's going to play? I think he's going to play. I think because he wants to play, because he finished the game. I think those are indicators that would lead you there. There are two things that are cautionary for me. One, the Chiefs seem to be laying it on awfully thick that he's going to play.
Yes.
Warning sign number one.
Yep.
Andy Reid called this, and Jeff, you sent pictures out, and I talked about it on my radio show today. Andy Reid called it not as severe as the injury he had in 2019. BS. That's an absolute fabrication. I went back and watched that game, as you did, obviously, Jeff, as you were taking shots from your laptop. And he's not in nearly the kind of pain. He's not moving nearly as bad. This is not 2019 over. Just in the severity of the injury to the ankle. Secondly, I talked to Trent Green yesterday, who said this is a whole nother world. That was his left ankle. That was the stride ankle. This is the one that's got to stick in the ground, and he's got to drive off of to throw the ball. So it's going to change the dynamics of how he throws the football. He said that makes it different. I look at those two things. More severe, can't really drive off of it. I talked to somebody in sports. They're in a different sport, but they said, listen, they've been told that reality is, however bad it is when you first do it, a week later, it's actually worse. You got to get worse before you get better. So whatever we saw from him, if that's true, whatever we saw from him on Sunday is not going to be what he is. He's going to be less than that. So do I think he's going to give it a try? I do. I mean, I'm sure they've done the x-rays. They don't think that he's going to be ripping the bone apart or in any other serious danger. Do I think there'll be a point where they go, nope, that's it, you're out, Chad Henne's in? Yeah, I think that could happen. But would I rule out? I have nothing behind this other than how hard they sold it. And the other thing that, Eric, I'd be curious on your part is the line movement. Why is the line gone from Chiefs -3? It's 1 when it finally hits the general public, which means some key people, the early people that had a shot at it, bet the Bengals. And then it's just kept going, reaching all the way to 2.5 today, at least on FanDuel. And then it came back to 1.5. I haven't looked at where it is tonight. But that makes me wonder, is information leaking out there to those that have, the people that get them the information, that there's a chance that Patrick Mahomes isn't playing? I'm just a little bit curious with that line move. All those things makes me believe, there is a real chance he doesn't play.
So here's the deal with the betting markets. The initial move off of 3 was real because, I think a lot of people said, Jeffrey Benson of Circa said if Patrick Mahomes was 100% healthy, they would have hung out -6.5. And he would have made it 4.5. It opens 3. It gets bet down almost immediately. The problem with the analysis based upon the betting markets is right now the limits are low, right? So anything that anybody's doing in the betting market right now is to get a position so that they can buy back on the Chiefs after it gets to as high as it's going to get. And, one thing, and I just, for the folks who are new to betting or whatever, not that many games land on 2, not that many games land on 1, and no games in the playoffs land on 0. So the move from 2.5 to 2.5 is worth about the same as moving from 2.5 to 3.5, because 8 to 9 to 10% of games land on 3, right? So this line move that everybody's talking about, it is 5 points, but it doesn't work linearly like that. So what we saw actually today in the markets was it got to 2.5, and a big respected group called Right Angle Sports bet a significant amount of money on Chiefs plus 2.5. That's what got it down to 1 at Pinnacle and in some other places. So I think what, oftentimes they'll call it, this is what's called a head fake, but like the groups will, the sharp groups will bet on the wrong side to get the number all the way out. And I think what the sharp groups wanted was to get this thing to Bengals -3 so that they could come over the top and hammer Chiefs +3. And I don't think it's ever going to get to Bengals -3 unless Mahomes doesn't play, and I don't think there's really a chance for that to happen. So yes, the markets have moved towards the Bengals, but the moves have not really been that significant percentage-wise.
Jeff?
I mean, I've seen a lot of comments here about whether he's going to play or not, and nobody's questioning that. Like, nobody's questioning whether he's going to try or even make plays out there. The question is,
I do. I question it. I question whether he's even going to get on the field.
Okay, then that's fair. I think the question is, can he play at a level that allows this team to beat a team that's beaten them 3 consecutive times? And when he's been healthy, they have not beaten this team. And so it's fine to say he's going to be okay, but realistically, you can't watch that game in the second half. They went 1 for 6 on third downs. He had some throws out there that were atrocious because he could not, his footwork was changed because of the pain in his leg. He had to jump up in the air to throw a pass to Marquez Valdez-Scantling for a touchdown. And I will say this, when you have an injury like that happen to an opposing quarterback in the middle of the game, it's totally different than when you have a week to prepare for what that quarterback's going to potentially do. I guarantee you the Bengals will come into this game saying, 1, we're going to light him up. We're going to blitz like crazy to see if he can move. And then 2, once we know what he can do, then we'll adjust our game plan accordingly. Like, he will see stuff he has not seen in a while because people were scared to do it. So that to me is part of what's going to happen here. Like, they're going to have to figure out how to play offense knowing that he can't bail them out with his legs, which again is a huge part of his game. If it's Tom Brady with this, it's a different conversation. This is a guy who uses his legs a lot.
How much could he does, but we've also seen him make throws with no legs. He was making jump throws before he even got hurt. So if anybody's got to do it without their legs, he's got the arm talent to do it. I will say that. But how about the notion that, somebody mentioned the stat, and we've got a lot of folks here tonight in the chat room, so we really appreciate it. So I'm trying to get through as many of them as I can. But, he he does have some of the best stats from throwing in the pocket. Like, maybe is it possible this is a good thing? This breaks the Bronco and makes him, I hate using the term Bronco on a Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, but the Wild Stallion is broken and then now is ready to race, and be the, the great champion racehorse, because he's not just wildly doing things and he throws on time. They become a more efficient offense. Eric, could he actually be a better quarterback if he's forced to play from in pocket?
Well, that, and like, don't you, for one, the Henny drive, I think, was instructive, right? Because Andy Reid, I think we've gotten, and I'm as victim to this as anybody, but with Andy Reid, we've gotten into this idea of like, he's the only thing Andy Reid does is get in Patrick Mahomes' way, right? Like, that's kind of a narrative that, I, for example, have been guilty of perpetuating at times. And what we saw Sunday was we saw the old Andy Reid that used to drag Alex Smith's ass to 12-4, right? And we saw the early, some of the things that Andy Reid does that truly makes him special. And yeah, it's one drive or whatever, but then they did some other things that, were helpful. I know Jeff said the third down, and that's certainly true, but they moved the football and controlled the game in the second half. There was never really a time in that second half where you really felt all that nervous for that game. And so I think Andy Reid's going to coach the game of his life on Sunday. And I have been somebody who's been skeptical of him at times. And I also think this is not a Bengals team that is incapable of, this Bengals team has lost to Cooper Rush. They've lost to Jacoby Brissett, and they've lost to Mitch Trubisky. This is not a team that's incapable of losing to a backup quarterback or a quarterback who's weaker than he normally is. So I look at this and I think, there's a lot, and granted, I respect the Bengals. They're a very good football team. They've won the last 3 games fair and square, all this stuff. But I think that the Chiefs have some arrows in the quiver because of how they depend upon Mahomes. They've never had to use Andy Reid's best so far this year because their quarterback doesn't require it. But now they have not only a week, but also an extra day to prepare for this game and know everything a priori. I think that they're going to be able to scheme up something that takes advantage of Mahomes and the good things that he can still do, even if he is hobbled with an ankle injury.
Jeff, I'll give you a chance to pounce on that, or I'll do it.
You can go ahead.
Okay, because you usually get put into that role, so let me do it.
Yeah.
I hope you're right, and the Hall of Fame resume of Andy Reid certainly says that could happen. That he could have that kind of day. He could best, the Bengals coaching staff, and he's got good weapons. And yes, I think it's entirely possible. But what about 3 consecutive losses, albeit very close? I do agree the Chiefs; those were all winnable games for the Kansas City Chiefs. But why would you think when Zach Taylor has been getting the better of him all along, to this point, Andy Reid's suddenly going to have the magic bullet that figures it out this time? Is the 4th time's the magic charm? I mean, can we all agree that at the end of the day, Zach Taylor's been the better coach in their head-to-head matchup?
I don't know, Petro. Like, they've had a 75 or better % chance to win every one of those games in the second half of those games. So, like, we're at the Chiefs.
Right, and they didn't. So why didn't they? Because somebody screwed up.
But that's like, I mean, we played 3 hands of blackjack, and every single time you've gotten, 6-5, you double down, you lost 3 in a row.
3 football games, 3 entire football.
But they're
Eric,
not
I want to be on your side, but Jesus, give me a reason.
But Petro, you act like they've lost 31-3 in these games. You act like you act like they've lost 31.
How did I act like that when in the setup to what I was saying is I recognize all 3 of these games have been close. Okay,
so
I started.
My issue. What's more like? Okay, so let me ask a question, because this is going to get to the heart of whether or not we're ever going to be able to agree about this. What do you think is more fundamental? The Chiefs, getting ahead in those games, or the Chiefs losing those games?
What is more likely?
What is a more repeatable skill? Getting ahead of another team for 3 quarters, or blowing it in the 4th quarter?
Probably getting ahead for 3 quarters. I mean, if you've won after 3 quarters, you've won 9 of the quarters roughly. Had a lead in 9 quarters collectively. Yes, that's more repeatable.
So, and again, I'm not trying to got you here, but what I'm saying is it's not something, when Brady's Patriots beat the hell out of Manning's Colts multiple times. Those were multiple score games that the Patriots, stuck their hand on the Colts' head and said, try to punch me, and they can never reach them, right? And there was a legitimate, get over the hump situation. This is a Chiefs team, and again, both teams, and I respect the hell out of the Bengals, and I understand, I understand what I'm talking, as far as, but this is a team where in the first game last year, the Bengals outgained the Chiefs by 0.2 yards per play. In the second game, the Chiefs, in the AFC title game last year, the Chiefs outgained the Bengals by 0.2 yards per play. And then in the game in week 13 this year, they both had 6.5 yards per play. Every single one of these games is tightly contested. And again, it's the blackjack analogy. You're getting 6-5 every single one of these hands, and the dealer flashes you a 3 consecutive times. I'm still going to be confident in the 6-5 every time.
I mean,
this sounds like Chargers chargering logic to me. When it's the Chargers in this conversation, it's, Chiefs know how to win. When it's the Chiefs and the Bengals, it's, they were close and just a matter of time before things break their way.
Yeah, I would say, to the blackjack analogy, I don't know that you had 6-5. I think you're creating the ultimate scenario. You're working backwards to make your point. I would say that you've got 5-4. You've got a 9. I mean, the 4th quarter is where most of these games are decided, and so the idea that you somehow got screwed because you didn't get the 10 each time, no. And it's also, I could build the analogy the other way. Andy Reid had a 14. He's looking at a 6, and he hit. He couldn't figure out the calculus at the end of the regular season game last year. He needed to let him score. They couldn't figure out the spiral that they were in the second half of the AFC Championship game last year. Even their field goal was a ragtag, muddled up, broken down demolition derby of a field. Remember Mahomes wandering around and circling back around and then
look, I'm not saying they got unlucky or anything. What I'm saying is, and Tim had this say, this is what the Chiefs are telling them. The Chiefs are not telling themselves this, right? The Chiefs are very aware of what has freaking happened. I would say, though, that if I was in the building, I would say I am not afraid of the Bengals. There's nothing special about the Bengals that is causing these, like the Bengals are not winning these games 24-10. And so there's no reason to be scared of the Bengals. There is a reason you look back and say, okay, well, you mangled end of game clock management in Cincinnati the first time. Your quarterback played like dog doo-doo in the second half of the AFC title game last year. And then and your tight end fumbled when you were trying to go up 2 scores in the previous game, and you decided to kick a 55-yard field goal in the cold instead of letting your quarterback make a play. Like these are all explainable, but again, those are all one play in a game of 70 offensive plays on each side, and I think it's more fundamental to be ahead after 3 or in the fourth quarter or whatever. It's more fundamental to be able to do that repeatedly, which they do, than it is. I mean, this is a team that had again, they've only trailed like 15 times in heading into the fourth quarter in the Mahomes era. This is a great football team that has lost some close games that happen to be against the same team 3 straight times.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I do concede the 3 quarters thing, and listen. Everyone knows I grew up here. I'm a Chiefs fan. I want it to happen, but I'm also interested in the truth, and I can spin a yarn as to why my team's always going to win. I've been doing it since I was a child. Okay, it doesn't mean it's going to happen that way, and I do think the reason I think it's important to acknowledge where it's at. Because I think if the Chiefs are just like, no, we really won those first 3 games, they're going to get their ass kicked. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, I don't think they're going to have that mindset. So what we piss and moan as fans and analysts is not going to affect how they play. But, Jeff, I want to ask you this. How does the offense have to change? Like, what do you do if you're going to have a one-legged man back there?
Well, you have to run the ball more consistently. I think that's the first. You have to establish that. You have to give him a chance for play action to work. There's no way that the Bengals are going to buy the idea of them running the football unless they do it consistently. Like they have to commit to it. I think they have to run quick game a lot, long developing stuff. You have to look at it like if it's not there, check it down, get to the next play. And if it doesn't go anywhere, I mean, this offense is built around a quarterback who can do amazing things and a coach who is very creative. And so that allows them to be very aggressive in what they do. In a lot of ways, they're going to have to play like the Bengals play. Look at the way the Bengals played against the Bills. As much as we talk about that score and what happened, Joe Burrow is out there saying, you know what? I can't sit back here and throw 50-yard bombs to Jamar Chase. I got to throw 4-yard passes here. I got to throw an 8-yard pass here. And every now and then I get a chance to make a play, I'll make a play. But we're going to run the ball 34 times because our offensive line is down 3 starters. And so that's what they're going to have to do. And then they're going to have to get a lot of help from their defense, And so I disagree with Eric. I think that they should be scared of the Bengals because not only have they beat them 3 times, they went into Buffalo and beat the crap out of a really good team.
Yeah, but Bengals almost lost a game to Tyler Huntley 2 weeks ago.
Eric, we know that's a divisional game against a defense that is much better than what the Chiefs have.
Okay,
that
but if the Bengals are better, let's back up. Let's back up. If the Bengals are better than the Chiefs and they've played 3 times in the last, 12, 13, the Bengals and Chiefs have played 3 times the last 13 months, right? The familiarity between the Bengals and the Chiefs is the same as the Bengals and the Ravens right now.
Yeah,
and so the Chiefs are an underdog in this game with what we were considered a weakened quarterback. It's going to be much closer to the Ravens Bengals game where it's mucked up and anything can happen. So if the Chiefs are truly the worst team here, it should be more like Ravens Bengals, which I'll give the Chiefs a better chance in a game that the Ravens gave the Bengals just 2 weeks ago than some game where these two teams played a drive and a half in the last 2 years. That's what I'll go.
If the Bengals go up 14-0 in this game, the Chiefs have no chance of winning. But
that's.
I promise
they didn't go up 14-0 against. They didn't go up 14-0 against the Ravens. They got no
against the Bills. They went up 14-0.
Listen. Hold off on the Ravens. Use your transitive property.
Yeah.
You know that's crap because then you have to say the Chiefs are no better than the Texans.
But everybody's.
They were after 4 quarters. But Eric, come on. You listen. I'm fine if you are you picking the Chiefs to win.
I'm picking the Chiefs to win on Sunday. And here's the point: everybody's talking about this win against the Bills, which is super impressive, as it's literally the only game the Bengals have ever freaking played. And no, they've been in rock fights. This team has lost to Jacoby Brissett.
Eric, they've won 10 straight games.
They won
won 10
down
straight
17-0 to Tom Brady and the Bucs, and the Bucs handed them that game. This is not the 07 Patriots. This is not the 02
Nobody's
Bucs.
saying that.
This is the
Nobody's claiming that.
Listen, all I want to say is I get frustrated with anybody, either one of you, when the very pillars that you build an argument one direction on, and call me on it when I do it, because I try not to do it. But when you build the pillars of my reasoning is based on this pillar, and then you take that pillar and throw it out and use a different pillar, like when it fits your argument. And you talk about the betting markets, and Eric, you've said, hey, look at the betting markets. You know, they say the Chiefs are the favorite to win. So, like, okay, so they're going to win. Well, the betting markets don't say they're the favorite to win now. So why does
it's a coin flip? The betting markets say it's a coin flip. A coin flip, Petro. And I know you don't believe in luck, but it's literally whether or not a coin lands heads or tails is the difference. The Bengals aren't -7, boys. Like this, they are -1. They are favored by a point. This is
on the road, right? Does that make it a 4-point game?
I don't care, and it's factored in.
more like 3, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, yeah. I mean, by the way, everybody keeps bringing up me picking the Bills. Me picking the Bills makes me even more impressed by what the Bengals did.
Yeah,
I mean, people act like the Bengals were like some dog shit team.
I'm impressed by the Bengals too. In fact, who picked the Bengals on the show last week?
Yeah.
I did. I picked the Bengals last week. I call balls and strikes. Here's the thing. The Bengals are a great football team that deserves to be here, that has had a great season. But and I'm not accusing you guys of this. I'm watching the shows, I'm listening to Sports Talk Radio, I'm answering questions on Sports Talk Radio, and people pretend that this team slayed the dragon last week in the Bills when the Bills were drawing dead for weeks now, and also like we've already seen the Bengals struggle with other football teams. This is not an immortal football team. So and I'm willing to go through all of the problems the Chiefs have, but the Bengals have just as many. And that's why the game's a pick 'em, and that's why I still like my chances with the best player in the league, even on one foot.
Yeah, and listen. At the end of the day, there's a route, there's a path that you can reasonably, I don't know that logically, but reasonably, you can get to being on the side of the Kansas City Chiefs. But the issue that I have is, like, first of all, that this game is absolute, that whatever happens on Sunday was an absolute, we all know is crap. Play it 10 times. It's an oblong shaped ball. Yeah. Play it 10 times. You know, if you like the Bengals, what do you like them? Do you like them 6 out of 10, or do you like them 10 out of 10? If you like them 10 out of 10, you're off the podcast. Okay. And none of us are that stupid. And if you like the Chiefs, do you like them 6 out of 10, or do you like them 10 out of 10? Again, 10 out of 10, you're off the podcast because you're a jackass. All right. So none of us would say 10 out of 10, right? I'm just saying I don't think it's unreasonable to look at this. In fact, I think it is reasonable to look at this and say Vegas is saying 6.5 out of 10 for the Bengals, like 65%. I know that the spread would say a coin flip, which is to your point, Eric. To your point, 3 straight wins, and they're only laying 1.5 with a quarterback on one leg. I do think they're somewhat begging you to bet the Bengals. And that what makes me want to bet the Chiefs. And I have a rule of thumb. Like, there are different things when it comes to gambling. I'll bet a 14-point dog every time, right? Because I think coaches let up off the gas, and I'll be about 50-50, but at some point I'll catch a run. So I'll do that. Patrick Mahomes getting points is an auto bet. And if you do it, you're going to look pretty smart, I think, in the long run.
Well, can we pause? Like, I know we got to get to where we got to get to. The Chiefs defense won them a playoff game on Saturday, didn't they not? Like,
that's a little bit of overreaction too.
Let's
not go there.
That was the whole question we had all season was, Eric, what do you mean by this defense is good enough? And I'm like, when the whole rest of the team, and again, it was the offense too, but mostly it was the defense. The questions we had about this defense was, is this a good enough roster? Does it depend too much on Mahomes? And I think, like, for the most part, it teeters on that edge. But on Saturday, and granted, it's against a 9-8 team. The Jaguars are not as good as the Bengals. I get all that. But when the quarterback went down, I went on. We went on this show, and I said right to Petro. I said, this is a game where for once in the Chiefs Mahomes era, the rest of the team has to pick up Patrick Mahomes and carry him, and they did.
Is that what you call it?
We were going to get here, so let's fast forward to here. We'll just take the rundown in a different order. It was not an acid; it was actually a vitamin.
Well, but this comes
I may need
an
an acid,
right? Like everybody's talking about the Bengals, like they're a more complete team than the Chiefs, which I buy. But the Chiefs are not some team with one guy and a bunch of dog shit on the rest of the roster.
I think that's fair.
Nobody's saying that.
Yeah.
But that's.
If somebody's picking the Bengals, they're not calling the Chiefs. It's not 0 or 100. Come on, neither Jeff or I are saying the Chiefs are crap. If we pick the other side, and I'm going to bet the Chiefs, so I'll probably drag my ass to picking the Chiefs by a point or two or a field goal or something in this at the end. But the defense, Jeff. I mean, listen, what he's saying is right. They did seal the deal. Takeaways late.
They did.
They pressured the quarterback.
Yep.
Multiple people on the defensive line were getting hits. It ends up being a one-score game with a field goal late.
Yep.
That, frankly, who knows if they would have gotten into the end zone had they been, had more time, but they settled for the field goal. It was a one-score win with a quarterback that was hobbling around. The defense did have to step up, and it did stand tall. There's reason to believe with its youth that it's getting better.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Saying they won the game for them is a bridge too far for me. I think they played great. They got turnovers when they had to get turnovers. Nobody on this show was picking Jacksonville to win this game. They won this game by 7 points? It was about the game we thought it was going to be. And ultimately, they won this game because Chadiha came in, led a 98-yard drive. Mahomes came back, got him 10 more points. If you're telling me the defense won the game for them, those points aren't going to matter. And so defense played well. The defense has improved. I'm not going to sit here and say, and I said the same thing last week. I said what I don't like about Jacksonville, they don't have the playmakers at receiver that the Bengals have or the Bills have. And so they scheme up a lot of stuff. And I would argue that I don't know what kind of game Doug Peterson was calling in the third quarter, because all of a sudden every pass was a smoke screen, bubble screen, 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He wasn't even challenging people down the field.
My guy Frank Clark was getting the guy I've never doubted in my life. The guy he was getting pressure.
Yeah, and so I think that they played well, but I don't think that they won the game because of the defense.
Jeff, let me ask you this, because I talked about it with Tim Grunhard earlier this week, and he said it's been a long day. Today it was this morning. Well, no, technically, I'm sorry, it was this afternoon because everything's live on radio. But we were talking about it, and he said, "Listen, snow is an offensive lineman's friend." He said when it started snowing in Buffalo, that was a big advantage. This may make your point, Eric, to the Bengals and getting by the Bills. He said, listen, the questionable offensive line largely got negated because the footing went south. Okay. And that every offensive lineman would love to play in a snowy game because it gives them an advantage, right? So, from that standpoint, if we get a clean track, and we may not, we may have a sloppy, snowy game in Kansas City right now. That's part of the forecast. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But if we get a clean track, are you seeing enough out of that defensive line? And the fact, and Jacksonville was going short because I think they said we can't protect long enough, right? Like Chris Jones is a bitch. We got a problem there. Other guys are stepping up. Do you think that if this is wrong, like where all of us were wrong in the 2020 or January of 21 Super Bowl that were jumping on the Chiefs, was we had seen backup offensive linemen one by one get added into the mix for the Chiefs. The Chiefs offensive line be able to handle it, and we just thought they'd keep handling it. And you were the one guy who said, no, they're not going to handle the Bucs defensive line. And the Bucs defensive line rained all over them. Is that possibly the same scenario that's happening here? It was masked because of the snow last week, and the Chiefs defensive line is going to have a party on top of Joe Burrow's head. Jeff?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Joe Burrow showed me a lot in that game, and I won't completely dismiss their offensive line's success. I won't praise the snow for their offensive line success. I will say they came into Arrowhead last year with a crap offensive line.
Yes.
And he made plays. And so for me, that's what I'm going off of. Every time the Chiefs play against this team, he ends up making plays. And so while I think it should be an advantage for the Chiefs defensive line, until it shows up, to your point, after 3 losses, Like, I just think Joe Burrow is going to be the next Tom Brady. I'm convinced of it now. The ball comes out so fast. And another part of this, too, is you have receivers who win quick. And so I remember a conversation I had when, the now deceased Greg Knapp, rest in peace, who was the former offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, when Peyton Manning was at the end of his run there and they had a crappy offensive line. Couldn't name a guy who played on that offensive line. And I said, what are you going to do with this line? He's just like, well, quarterback makes up for that. Like, really? He's like, yeah. And so the ball came out on an average of like 2 or 3 seconds every time Joe Burrow dropped back. The Bills couldn't touch him. I think that that's going to happen again this time. I think when you have receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you have a quarterback who sees the game like Joe Burrow, who's going to make the right decision and get the ball to the right people at the right time, and you're going to run the football, and your coaches are going to put you in good situations. I'm going Joe Burrow.
The Chiefs' run defense has been pretty good, Eric. The backup offensive line for the Bengals. I mean, how much do you think did Jeff's right. They had a crappy offensive line last year, and Joe Burrow made plays. Why would it be different this year?
Yeah, I mean, I all the points Jeff made are correct. I mean, I remember back. I mean, it's funny. It feels like forever ago that Brady brought the Patriots into Arrowhead and won in overtime, and yet, like, we've never seen an AFC title game played in another arena since. But that was a year where the Chiefs had over 50 sacks. And the Patriots were playing guys like Trent Brown on the offensive line, and they just threw quick, right? And to Jeff's point, the Bengals receivers win quick. That was part of the thesis of last week and why they were going to be able to win. And so, yeah, that makes me worried. On the other hand, to your point before, it was, in that year where the Chiefs went 14-2 when 60% of their offensive line was out, it was all great until it wasn't, right? Until there was a great game plan that dealt with it. And there was, people got up in the wide receivers' faces for the Chiefs, and they were able to get pressure on Mahomes, and it didn't work, right? So there's certainly, like, there was a reason the Bengals were 6-point underdogs on Sunday at close. And those reasons still exist. And even though they were able to cover them up for 1 week, the Chiefs, sort of know that they exist. So those are all things to think about. I do think Burrow, it has that Brady element to him. I do think he's, can move out of the pocket, but this is the best the Chiefs pass rush has been in the 4-game series between these two teams. Frank Clark looks about as good as he's ever looked. Chris Jones had 6 pressures last week, even without the sacks. Michael Dana, you're seeing something from Kylan Saunders and Derek Nottie that you've not seen in a while. And Karlaftis actually didn't have a great game last week, but he's obviously come on at the end of the year. So I think if they've ever had a chance to get to Burrow in ways that they haven't before, this is their best chance.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Do the takeaways continue, Jeff? That has become routine. Like we talked about how they really didn't have any takeaways early. They're getting them on a regular basis. Does that continue here against Joe Burrow, who I think has thrown 33 touchdowns and just, 33 and 8? 33 touchdowns to 8 interceptions since his 4 interceptions in the opener.
Yeah, and he's 8 touchdowns and 1 interceptions in those 3 wins against the Chiefs. I think like 350 yards per game. I mean, he's outplayed Mahomes in every one of these games. And so, yeah, I see it every time that these teams play. Like, when you have the kind of receivers, if Mahomes had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, like, they would probably win 50 straight games. Like, that's how good that group is. And then you factor in Joe Mixon and Samaje P. Ryan. It's a great group, and Hayden Hurst. And so, yeah, I think that it's fair. It's a lot easier to play quarterback. And Mahomes even said this in the Tyreek Hill days. When you walk up to line of scrimmage, you look over, you say, oh, my guy's being defended by somebody who can't defend him. Like, I'm going to go to that guy every time until they change it up. And so, yeah, Eric mentioned the Ravens. The reason the Ravens can play the Bengals tough is because they've got an all-pro cornerback in Marlon Humphrey, and they got an all-pro cornerback in Marcus Peters, and they got a lot of guys in their back 7 who can cover and who can run. And so the Chiefs aren't bringing that to the table. They got some guys who've got some potential, who have played well, who have improved and all that. And I don't want to take anything away from that, because I totally think that this unit, if it continues to grow, can be a really good unit. But you got to match up with these guys at some point. And if you don't, guess what? The ball's going over your head to Jamar Chase. It's going over your head to T. Higgins. Like, that's been proven time and time again. And so, yeah, I think that defending him, getting takeaways is not going to be easy because the ball's coming out fast and the guys he's throwing it to are really good.
Why isn't Chris Jones getting sacks, Eric?
Bad luck. Like, I think when you pressure the quarterback 6 times, especially when, I think now, I mean, it's in the playoffs, it's very much like he's getting pushed in a lot of these games. Frank Clark's getting the sacks. Frank Clark has the same number of playoff sacks as Reggie White has. Like, this time of year, I think it just depends upon, I think it's the defense getting the sacks. Now, they didn't get any against Burrow in the AFC title game last year. And did they get one, I believe? And that was kind of a fluky one in week 13. So when it, I think playoffs in general, I think it's just an unlucky streak of, getting pressures and not necessarily getting home. I think against the Bengals, it's not getting pressure. So that has to change. I think if he gets the same level of pressure he got last week against Jacksonville, the sacks will come at a expected rate.
The Red Gold Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire KC metro area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear since 1994. Get free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. You can find out for yourself why Gann Asphalt is the best in Kansas City. I'll find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Tell them you heard about it on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. All right. Do we see Chad Henne? Is there a sign, Jeff, that would have you, if you're Andy Reid, going to Chad Henne?
I mean, that's a great question. And I've actually thought about that too. It's, what do you have to see from Mahomes to decide Henne's a better option for you? I mean, I think he just has to be hurt again, to be honest with you. I think he has to show that he just can't move. He can't protect himself. That's the only way it gets to that. And I'm still not, like you, I'm very skeptical of how the Chiefs are broadcasting that he's okay, that he's better. I mean, if you look at that 2019 game against Jacksonville, it's not the same sprain. He was right back in the game after that. Someone this morning showed me photos of him on Twitter working out at a local gym in Kansas City. Why you go to a local gym in Kansas City to work out when you're trying to rehab a very serious injury for a game?
We even know those photos were taken from today.
What's that?
Do we even know those photos were taken from?
Yeah, exactly. We don't know that. And in any case, even when you are rehabbing an injury, you're going to do it without a boot on your leg. I mean, you're going to have your leg exposed. When I see him running, when I see him moving around, that's when I'll believe he's going to be in a better place. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It's like I kind of lost. What was the question you asked me again? I lost my train of thought there.
What would it take for Chad Henne to end the game?
Henne, yeah.
And can they win with Henne?
Yeah, I think that's what it would take, him being completely ineffective. And I think if he starts the game, he's going to finish the game. But yeah, I think Henne. I think if you start the game with Henne, you game plan for it. Andy Reid's a good enough coach that he could pull off the upset with Henne playing. But I think they're going down this road with Mahomes. They're going to ride or die with him.
Yeah. Can they win with Henne? And can you see a scenario that has him in the game, Eric?
Yeah. I mean, we saw in 2019 they played a very good Packers team at home with Matt Moore. That was a game where I believe that they closed as 4.5-point underdogs. I believe that they would be about 4.5-point underdogs if Henne were to start this game from the beginning. They lost that game by 7. They were 3.5-point underdogs to the Vikings the following week and won that game outright. Now they had some fortune, of course, with Kirk Cousins being himself in that game, so that really helped them. But they've won with backups before, and I think to Jeff's point, like it's not likely. But Andy Reid is Andy Reid shows who he is with the Alex Smiths of the world. And, so I do think that they would be there would be a situation where they could win with Henny. Obviously, I'm not going to stake my life on it, but it's certainly a possibility. They're not dead in the water if he has to start.
My feeling is that they can win with Henny, and I wouldn't be shocked if they won one game. I don't know that they can win two against the caliber of opponents that they're going to have. That's kind of what we saw with Matt Moore. He almost beat the Packers and then beat the Vikings, but couldn't get both of them. If they got to get it done for one, okay, but they did burn a little bit of the Henny, juju in the last game with the 98-yard drive. And I think there is an element of everybody raising their level of play. I'd like to believe that the AFC Championship game is enough that everybody's giving your best shot no matter who's out there. But if you wanted to say, hey, everybody brings it up a notch, or maybe they call the game differently, I am open to Eric's point about Andy Reid and his good plays, and that Andy Reid would shift gears and it could maybe be the better approach. Playing more of an Alex Smith style game plan maybe is the better approach against the Bengals. I think it's possible. Isiah Pacheco, Jeff, is he the key? Does he have to have a monster day? Can you see any scenario of them winning without him going for 100?
I think he's one of the keys. I would expect him. I think Ronald Jones should get some run in a game like this, just because it all depends on how the Bengals want to play this. And Zach Taylor has said, look, he's not taking anything for granted here. He's going into this game thinking Mahomes is 100%. He's going to do the stuff he's done in the past. We're going to have to defend him that way and then adjust as we go forward. I think if that's going to be how they come into this, then yeah, you're going to have to establish the run very early, and he's going to have to be effective. And the only problem with him being back there is that when you have to throw, or you're in situations where when you're trying to surprise them with the throw and you're not McKinnon on the field, I don't know if you want that guy back there in pass protection when your quarterback's hobbled. That's the scary proposition. But yeah, he's going to have to do the things that he did in this past week. That 39-yard run he had in that drive was a huge part of that 98-yard touchdown drive. And so, yeah, he's got to be close to 15 carries and close to 90, 95 yards again for this team's offense to really be effective.
Eric, you like the Chiefs to win. Is it Pacheco channeling his inner O.J. Anderson from the 90 Giants en route to the MVP of the AFC Championship game? Is that the path they use to get there?
I think it certainly helps, and I think that his powerful running style is something that the Bills lack, and one of the things they weren't able to to deploy the other day. I think it's also going to be a Kadarius Toney and possibly a McCole Hardman game if Hardman comes off of IR and can play at a level that is, where he's been in the past. I mean, he had great playoffs last year. So yeah, I think you're going to see Pacheco. I think McKinnon, who didn't have it, I think Kelsey's going to be covered up fairly well in this game relative to normal. I think it's going to be a McKinnon game in the passing game, and I think it's going to be a Pacheco and Toney game in the run game.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's going to have to play well. I agree with Jeff. I think McKinnon's going to have to play also, but I think they found a nice little rhythm with the two of those guys. And so I expect them to get production out of the running back. It was a different kind of production than we'd gotten used to. McKinnon didn't do a lot in the last game, but they still got great production.
I was going to say, it's amazing how much McKinnon vanished when Mahomes was hobbled.
He vanished. It should be pointed out to your first point, Jeff. Sorry to interrupt you. He vanished as far as a production standpoint, but he sure as hell didn't vanish in the blocking. I mean, he kicked some people's ass in pass protection last week.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. All right. Special teams. Jeff, is this the time that for all the time that they've in all the situations where they put themselves in bad field position because they've been going for the big returns? Now it's not Patrick Mahomes. Vintage Patrick Mahomes is now the time that maybe all the practice they've gotten going for punt and kick returns is going to pay off. And you roll the dice and say, I know it's looked like crap all year, but we could really use a return touchdown in this game. And you unleash, Dave Tobin in the return game as much as trying to get as much as you can out of it.
That's possible. It wouldn't surprise me if they went that route to try to find some way to boost their offensive production. But I said a few weeks back, man, that, and this goes to every team, not just the Chiefs. You saw it with the Bills last week. Whatever it is that is a problem for you in the regular season, it's going to become a bigger problem in the postseason. It's going to show up. And last week we talked about this. Offensive tackle is a problem. Guess what showed up? Offensive tackle became a problem again. Special teams has been a problem all year long. Butker made his kicks, but then all of a sudden, Agnew's almost breaking 2 big kick returns for touchdowns. You know, these things don't go away. So I think I still envision when the Chiefs lose a game in the postseason, it's going to involve that. It's going to involve offensive tackle issues. It's going to involve pass coverage issues, and it's going to involve a special teams gaffe. So I'm not really confident that that's going to be a positive here. If it is, great for the Chiefs, but I just think it's been part of their storyline all season long, and it will continue to be part of it.
Your expectation for the special teams, Eric, in this game, how will they play it?
I think that I think Kadarius Toney will run the punts back if he has a chance to. I don't think the kickoffs are. I don't think you can just turn on the light and be like, "Hey, we're going to be good at returning kickoffs all of a sudden." You know, so I think that they'll probably kneel those down still. Jeff said, a big part was Butker making 2 long kicks the other day. It was probably his best game for a long time. Really picked up the offense there. This is going to be the one where, again, all season I've been very optimistic. I've said, look, a lot of these things will, even out over the season. They have to be basically perfect, on special teams this week for them to win, I think.
Yeah, they can't be getting beaten on that part of the equation, right? Because Joe Burrow's going to get his. You can't be giving up a score in special teams and think that it's all going to come together for you. Tell me, how big a factor is the weather, Jeff? What if we get a sloppy track? Who benefits from what weather-wise?
Well, I don't think you want Mahomes running around on a bad ankle on a rough field, on a slippery field. I don't think that bodes well. It's snow earlier, right? Not snow late. So that is, if it's sloppy, yeah. If it's sloppy, it benefits the Bengals because you get what you have with the Bengals game last week, where your defensive line can't really get the get off that they want to have against the beat up offensive line. Your quarterback is in a more compromising position when he's moving around, and if it's really cold, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I play one when my girlfriend gets bored in the bedroom, but
Too much information.
That's right. But yeah, so I don't know how much cold is going to affect it, but I don't think cold weather with those kinds of injuries is helpful either.
What is the weather?
Wow. So we spent all last week, Petro, deciding whether or not I'm funny, and Jeff's the funny one. Actually, all of a sudden
he doesn't. He's not a compliment fisherman about it. He just says funny things. You go fishing. The weather,
okay.
Weather, funny guy.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the weather and how it impacts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the weather being bad benefits the Bengals, for sure. Although, you have to be precise in the passing. Like the weather was bad the other day in a weird way, in that there wasn't wind and stuff like that. Like it was just snow. The wind was 5 miles per hour, and so the winning quickly in the passing game was easier because even though there was precipitation, it wasn't prohibitive to throw the ball. If it was prohibitive to throw the ball, I think it maybe actually helps the Chiefs. So I guess it depends upon what kind of bad weather there is. When we look at there looks to be precipitation and stuff, but is there going to be really big winds? You're looking at 12-mile-per-hour winds, which are not trivial. That can make it a little bit harder on the Bengals.
Yeah, I saw some max gusts up to 18, 9 degrees, mainly clear and frigid. We're still
What was it last year? It was cold. It was sunny, but was it cold last year? I thought it was pretty cold last time they played.
No, it was real. I didn't even have to wear a hat when I went to the game last year.
Was it?
Yeah, warmed up.
Maybe I'm thinking the Buffalo game was really cold.
Don't you remember swinging into my driveway to pick up Eric?
Oh, that's right. And it's Tony Gonzalez jersey. You're right. Yeah.
After he'd eaten all of my mom's barbecue and then jetted for the stadium.
Man, how big is that barbecue going to be by the time we're old and gray? You're going to be like, yeah, Eric ate like 3 helpings of Joe's, and my mom was starving, and now
we had leftover Joe's. My mom brought over, and So you want to bite? And Eric's like, yeah, there you go. Crushed it. Gone. Done.
Yeah.
You know, that's how he operates, man.
It was
That's how
30 pounds ago, but
Yeah.
so I won't. I don't have enough room this
I don't-
time around.
I don't know. I can't tell because apparently you're wearing a sweater made of the same material as your chair.
My wife, by the way, my
Yeah.
gracious wife, I just found that very amusing in the back here. So everybody here is funny, but me today.
I
I
love
like the sweater. I think the sweater's got something to it here, but it doesn't match the chair.
Looks like
Yeah.
you got
Eric, by the way,
patched.
people are
Looks
very
like you-
concerned about Eric going to this game, by the way. I keep seeing a lot of comments about Eric not showing up. Eric's not going to be in town for this,
Yeah.
right?
First of all, let me just say this, Kirk. Those are shoulder pads. The chair does look like you got shoulder pads. No, like women's shoulder pads, like your Grace Jones on a fashion runway or
Love
something.
that.
Are you going to this game? Inquiring Red, Gold, and Bold fans want to know.
That is for me to know and for other people to find out.
Okay. I'm sure I'll find out at some point because if you are going to the game, I'll bet I have to house you at some point.
No,
I know I'll
Petro,
have to feed you.
Okay, back to train up a little bit. I went to the Broncos Chiefs game January 1st, 2023. I went with my friends. I stayed, I brought a couple people, so I obviously didn't grace and you were sick that weekend, so we obviously didn't get to see each other. And so I went, and the Chiefs won. People forget this. I didn't advertise that much because I didn't want people trying to murder me, but they did win. The curse didn't exist to begin with and is broken. So,
Okay. All right. There it is. By the way, anyone get a reaction to how Carl Cheffers is going to be calling a Super Bowl? That pissed a lot of Chiefs fans off today. Jeff, you got to get. Do they not? I texted somebody in the league. Does the league office not have televisions, or do they just not care?
I got the answer to this. So my grandfather passed away a long time ago, but one of the things he said to me, he passed away while
Talking about a big tangent, huh, Jeff? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, he passed away while I was in grad school. He had a great story. He said one time he was in a graduate class and he got a B+. And he said, "Hey, but I'm the best student in this class." And the professor looked him straight in the eye and said, "You are the best of a mediocre bunch of people." And that is what the NFL said to Carl Cheffers this week.
Yeah. Okay.
You are the best referee among a mediocre band of referees.
All these people in the comments section keep talking about the Chiefs being 2-0 when he's reffing games, or 9-3 when he's reffing games. Like, do we know what their record is?
I don't. I just can't stand.
Well, they won the Raiders game that he ref earlier this year, right?
They're
2-0 this year when he's ref. They didn't cover either game.
By the way, whoops, that's not the right one. I'd rather lose to Burrows than Cheffers, but this is my favorite one. Your dead grandfather's a better ref than Cheffers. May he rest in peace. You guys, I agree. Cheffers is terrible. I agree. It's a mediocre bunch. He still sucks compared to his peers. He's brutal. And I hope somebody in the 4 hand-picked questions that get lobbed at Roger Goodell, somebody throws a curveball and asks him about officiating at the Super Bowl this year. Maybe Jeff will get in there and pound the gavel and go at him on it. All right. Listen, who wins this game and why? Eric, you want to go first? Give the people what they want. Throw them some meat, Eric. Tell them the Chiefs.
I think the Chiefs win 31-13.
Why? How?
I think that Spags coaches the game of his life. I think Andy Reid coaches the game of his life. I think that the Bengals, I think they peak too early. I think they run out of gas, and I think the Chiefs snipe them both with the scripted plays. I think they get out ahead early, and I think by the time it gets to the second half and there's a lead, last year the Chiefs kind of petered out because they had been living too close to the edge all season. This year the Bengals peter out after the Chiefs get a big lead. So I think the Chiefs win by margin this week.
Jeff, did Ryan get it right? Are you picking the Bills this week?
I can't do that, but I'm picking the Bengals because of what happened with the Bills. Because I thought those were the 2 best teams in the AFC. The Chiefs were 3. It's fine to pick a team because you want them to win. I don't want to deride Eric's pick here. I will pick a team based on logic and sanity. I just don't see how a team that's won 3 games in a row is going to lose when the team that they're playing against again, their best player is compromised. And so I think that's what this game comes down to. Mahomes not going to be 100%. The Bengals actually are peaking at the right time. They've won 10 straight games. They just went into Buffalo and killed the Bills. And they're the better team. I mean, that's like, people don't want to hear that, but they're the better team. And so I got them 31-23.
I believe Josh Allen was absolutely beat to hell. I don't think he's ever gotten back. I think since the elbow injury, and they ran him into the ground. And I think we talked about that on our 2D podcast, which we'll do tomorrow. I think that was, I don't think he got the best edition of the Bills. So I do agree somewhat with, where Eric's coming from. I think they're a really good team, and it was a hell of an accomplishment. And they didn't just beat him by 1 point. The Bengals are really good, but I do buy what Tim said. I got to play my limited piss poor football life in some sloppy games, and that footing does help the offensive lineman. I mean, you can't rip and pull when you can't get your feet under you. So I think that did really benefit the Bengals. I think that tilted things their way. It's not the only reason they won, but I think it helped, and I don't think they're going to get that help in this game. And I think there'll be more pressure on Joe Burrow. The ball will come out fast. The Bengals will land their shots. It all rolls with Patrick Mahomes. I think Andy Reid's going to dial up a good game plan with him from the pocket. I'm probably a fool. I'm going to bet the Chiefs because anytime I get a chance to take Patrick Mahomes as a dog, at least right now at this point in his career, I'm going to take it because I think it's a little bit of a fool's errand to bet against him. So give me the Chiefs. I think the defense is going to have to get it done. Give me the Chiefs 24-23. What's the total in the game, Eric? I'm not a big totals player. What's the total?
Well, yeah, that actually is one indication that Mahomes is not as good. It opened 47.5. It got to 46.5. Now it's back to 47.5. So that is an indication, that Mahomes, that the weather is supposed to be suspect. Mahomes is not as healthy at the jump, but also that there's some buyback on the Chiefs. So the total, 47.5. I think it's 31-13. So I think it's going to be tight, but the last Chiefs game went under too.
Yeah, I'll go 24-23 Chiefs, and bring it home. I like the somebody said up there on a Bucker field goal with the laces in. He's just going to blast right through the laces. The laces will be a mess, and he's still going to.
I will say it will be an incredible story if the Chiefs win. It'll be if Mahomes goes out and plays well and they win the game. It'll be an amazing story. They certainly don't have the odds in their favor.
I agree. All right, that's going to do it for us. Remember to support our great sponsor, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Call them with any issues your business might have in the parking lot, 816-484-3338. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha of the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, my name is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.